Hello, friends and colleagues. Wasn't that just wonderful? I haven't been inspired in such a way this entire year, John. So thank you. It's filled the landscape of my mind with so many ideas. And I did want to ask you on that theme of landscapes of the mind. As an actor, you obviously enter the landscape of the mind of the character that you are preparing to play. Can you talk to us about any of the challenges of entering into the landscape of a particular mind? And then I'm interested in how you emerge from that, because a lot of it is quite heavy, dark, as you said, psychological, human dimensions of life and experience. How do you as an actor not withdraw from that after the performance, but how do you decant, I suppose, from the intensity of the role?
I think the main thing we have working for us when we're playing Shakespeare is the language. The language just works on you. It works on your emotions. It works on you physically and informs the way you present yourself and what your body does and what your voice does on the stage. Shakespeare does so much for you. Some other plays you have to do a lot of work to bring the piece to life and to flesh the character out. Whereas in Shakespeare, you're almost dealing with overload. There is so much he gives you. And quite frankly, by the end of the evening, you feel very much like just letting yourself flop because it's been so exhausting in a good way, like a good workout. I guess one of my favorite roles in that sense was Prospero, because I've done that 3 times. And I remember John Gielgud saying, oh, it's a very boring role, Prospero. He comes on at the beginning and tells people all their life stories, which they know already. Then he disappears for 3 acts, and he comes back at the end and makes a few speeches, and that's it. I found the reverse. Yes, he does set the play up in the beginning. He tells everyone their backstory and, gives the audience the whole backstory. But at the end, he comes back and ready to take his revenge on all these people who've damaged him. And when Ariel says, you've got to forgive them, and Prospero realizes, yes, I have to. Otherwise, I'm stuck here forever in this island. I have to let go and let them go. And the act of forgiving all those characters, I found very releasing, because you feel you are doing it yourself in a way. It brings out something very wholesome in you to do that. And I always come off feeling wonderful having done that last scene. So even if the first scenes are very hard work, telling all those backstories and keeping everybody's, you're following what I'm saying now. By the end you feel, what a great night I've had. Just all that benevolence that pervades the play at the end. So the play will do it for you. The one I had problems, I guess, understanding was Leontes, that kind of weird, strange mind. Others you can identify with rather easily, I find, on some level. But Leontes I found difficult. I went to a shrink and I said, this person, here's a case study of this person. These are the things he does. I didn't quote the play, just he does these various things. And he said, my God, this is a classic schizophrenic. Everything he does, and he went through all the symptoms. And I thought, right, that's it. So
fascinating.
Thanks, Doc.
And the psychiatrist didn't know that it was a Shakespearean character.
He said, who is this person? I said, Leontes, King of the Sixth. He said, I said, it's a play by Shakespeare. He couldn't believe it. He said, well, the diagnosis is absolutely authentic.
Yes.
So Shakespeare didn't know the technical terms, but he understood the disposition.
The disposition.
So that's the only time I've had recourse to, if you like, professional advice about
the mind of...
And it just reassured me that Shakespeare knew what he was doing. I just have to do what the character does. If you do what the character does and do what the character says, Shakespeare won't let you down.
How fascinating. Incredible. We have a number of questions, John, that have come in through the chat, and please do add your questions now. We have probably another 10 or 15 minutes, so if you do have questions, we're very happy for you to put them on the chat or the Q&A section, and we'll try to get to all of them. So from Penny, thank you, Penny, for engaging. Thanking you for a wonderful presentation. Penny saw the production of King Lear by Barry Kosky in the late 1990s, and she's extremely disappointed because it seemed that 9/10 of the dialogue had been cut. She asks, you rightly praise Shakespeare's words. Do you have any further comments about the lack of Shakespeare in that production?
Well, Barry Kosky always sets a cat among the pigeons with all his productions. And I wouldn't say it was Shakespeare's King Lear, it was Barry Kosky's King Lear. But of course, every production is to some extent a director's King Lear, whether it's a Hollywood musical version or whether it's Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. You always get a production. The director's not interpretation, much as he creates something using the text. Now, I'm a bit like the dragon at the gate, trying to guard Shakespeare against too much chopping around and reworking, rewriting, etc., etc. But Shakespeare is not holy scripture. You are allowed to do what you want to it and make what you want, whether it's a comic book or a musical or a pantomime. Shakespeare has been raw material for so many directors and producers and designers and artists of all kinds, whether it's writing operas or ballets or pop songs, whatever, using his plays. So Barry Kosky's was Barry Kosky's King Lear, and he did cut heaps and heaps of the text. I agree, which I just went along with it. It's his show, he was doing what he wanted, and I was just part of it. So I didn't take him on. I said, I gave him the gig to do King Lear, and he gave us his King Lear. So I think one has to just accept it as that was a version. Much like Laurence Olivier's famous movie of Hamlet, there's about half the text in that as well. Because of I guess the time it was made as a commercial movie, you didn't have the whole 4 hours worth. Interestingly enough, Kenneth Branagh made a movie of Hamlet, which was the whole play. And then they released it for a while, and the cinemas said, look, let's just cut it to a 2-hour version because that will sell better. People sort of said, no, we want the 4-hour version, and they had to put the 4-hour version back on again because that's the one people actually preferred, because they got the whole sweep of the play. So by cutting Shakespeare, you can lose quite a lot.
Yes, and the point that you make so strongly, again, is that the plays are inexhaustible in terms of the imaginative perspective and vision that you can bring to bear, because it's all there. And as you said, it's often too much. Shakespeare gives you too much. But I guess that's the continuous draw of Shakespeare, is that it is inexhaustible in terms of finding, making, creating meaning.
I would say the only thing I would say that, and the thing that I've tried to maintain throughout my association with Shakespearean productions, is that we in Australia and many parts of the world don't get to see Shakespeare as often as we think we do. We think we know these plays, but we don't know them. We don't. When did you last see All's Well That Ends Well, or Cymbeline, or Timon of Athens, for instance? We don't get to see the plays all that often. So I think when we do put them on, I feel a certain obligation to do the play as it's written. Other people, if they want to, can do the pop versions and operas and ballets or movies, whatever. But I feel that a Shakespeare company has the responsibility to let audiences see the play at least once in their lifetime as it was written. I don't say it has to be sort of traditional in terms of costume and setting and so on. You can make it as real and as now and as current as you want, as long as we get to hear all the words. I think that's a responsibility that companies should take on. Not every company. If you've got in, say, in London, you've got 3 or 4 or half a dozen companies all doing as you like it at the same time, you're not going to see them all identical. No. There's room for variation and playing games with them. But an audience in their lifetime, I think, should see at least one production of Shakespeare as it was written.
And that's the gift that Bell Shakespeare and your vision has given to Australia, because otherwise it would be a fairly barren landscape for those who are unable to travel internationally to see the many more productions in places like London. So we have another question from Robert. Thank you, Robert. He asks, how do you think Shakespeare dreamt up the settings and environments of his plays? And is it possible that he visited Verona, Alexandria and Rome, or does it spring from the bard's imagination? Great question.
Yes, it's good. We don't know a lot about Shakespeare's travels in those middle years. It's possible he did a bit of traveling. I would think probably not. I think he was very, very busy as a theatre worker and maker and producer and so on. But he read voluminously. He read everything he could lay his hands on, and it's all there in the sources, the descriptions of the places. You can catch him out occasionally, like for instance, putting a sea coast in Bohemia. There isn't one. And because he mentions the canals of Venice and mentions certain landmarks, people think, oh, he must have been there. No. Writers don't have to travel. They can get it all out of books. And, you know, he was very good at absorbing the sources and then reproducing them, making them sound fresh. But he was no slouch at, reworking other people's material and making it his own. So I don't think he traveled very much, probably.
No, but he brought to bear his imagination on what he was reading in his sources. Yes. And this one's from Kathy. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for your wonderful presentation, John. And how many of Shakespeare's locations have you visited? Have you ever been to Burnham Wood, for example? If you could pick any fantastic location to travel to, which would it be? Boy. Which of the landscapes, perhaps, is she asking?
I think I'd probably go to Prospero's Island, but make it my own. I could make it anything I wanted it.
And would you want Caliban and Ariel with you?
I think that Caliban's quite a good guy by the end. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind having Ariel waiting on me, hand and foot. No, I haven't been to many. I don't think Burnham Wood's probably there. I think the English chopped it down, didn't they, and marched on Dunsinane. And the Forest of Arden, I think, is only a fragment of that left, like Sherwood Forest. Not much of that left anymore either. No. But I have been lucky enough to go to Rome and Venice and Verona. Juliet's balcony is still in Verona. That's the real Verona, the real balcony. For a couple of bucks, you can go and stand up there.
Have a selfie. And from Brooke, she asks, how do we reteach audiences to enjoy their role of engaging their imagination and rediscover the virtue of the empty stage?
There's only one way, and that's through having very good actors who know what they're talking about and present the language really well. That's the only way. Putting actors who aren't up to it on an empty stage isn't going to help anybody. No. They've got to really inhabit the language and really make you see it, like a good storyteller with children, telling the story of Red Riding Hood or whatever, then really sell the story, make the kids boggle-eyed with, imagining that story and that setting and the giant or the witch or whatever. It's just the storyteller. And actors have to be, on a bare stage, really good storytellers and really inhabit those characters in that language and make the audience see it. I saw a production by an English company, I forget its name now, but they came with a production of, it might have been Complicité, of Grimm's Fairy Tales. And I went to see it at the Seymour Centre, and that 800-seat theatre was packed with tiny kids. And the noise was like cicadas on steroids. It was like shrieking, screaming, even before the show started. And I thought, how on earth are those actors going to cope with this? And the lights went down and the shrieking and screaming rose to an ear-splitting level. An actor walked on stage and went, once upon a time, you'd hear a pin drop. Yes. Almost magic words in the language. They were there. So that's what actors need to do. If you're going to have an empty stage, you need bloody good actors to hold your attention.
Yes, thank you. And from Kate, what is your favourite venue you have ever played in and why?
The one I have been on but haven't actually played in was the Globe in London. I went there and met Mark Rylance, who was the director at the time, and he took me on stage. It was during the daytime, and the audience wasn't in yet. But I walked onto that stage, and the thrill of that space was extraordinary. And actually, I had some actors with me, so we rehearsed a little bit of a scene from Comedy of Errors, and the tourists came in and watched while these Australian actors pranced around rehearsing a scene and applauded. And so we all felt like we played the Globe, you know. But to walk out there and imagine all those faces down there in the pit and then all around you in the galleries, you realize that Shakespeare is all about, it's all playing out. There's no room for internalizing. It's all out to the audience the whole time. Not just soliloquies, but everything is for the audience. It's all storytelling.
Yes, and so small and close in a way, not good in COVID times, but yes, that's the sense that I had, the intimacy of it, and the intimacy between actor and audience, which again could have been part of that engagement that you were talking about, the audience making the play alongside the actors. And Michael, thank you for your question. He says, you have obviously directed many of Shakespeare's plays. When you direct a play for a second time, do you reconceive the design? And what is that process like?
I've directed a number of them several times, and each time I have tried to see it differently, just because I didn't want to repeat myself or to be lazy. And so I've engaged with a designer who I find inspiring and say, no, here's the play, here are some ideas. Why don't you give me some feedback and some ideas? And between the two of us, then something new can emerge. Often I want to do a play again because I've thought about it differently, and want to do it again because I want to take a different angle on it, not just repeat myself, but to find something more. Like Hamlet, you can do every few years, you can see a different way of doing it and the reason for doing it and a way of presenting it, depending largely on who you cast as Hamlet, for instance. But yes, I think that the plays to me are so inexhaustible and so many options are open to you. And it will depend very largely on the theatre you're playing in, the space you're performing in, how you want to use that space. So I've never had a, if I couldn't think of a new way of doing a play, then I wouldn't probably do it. It's only because I want to find a new angle on it that I would repeat. I would want to direct it again.
And have you found that that aging, and I'm not referring to your age at all, John, but that phenomenon whereby we may read or experience something when we're adolescents or in our early 20s, and we will come back to that in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and it will have new meaning for us. The text itself hasn't changed, but we have changed. And I suppose you, with your vast experience with Shakespeare, has that been an experience for you where the meaning of a text can be quite dramatically different with the perspective of age?
I think it does. That I first read Hamlet when I was about 16, I guess, at school, and I thought I'd got the whole thing. I thought I understand this whole play. I didn't, of course. I realized 10 years later that I'd missing many different levels and angles. And then 10 years later, then I thought, my God, it's another whole thing I've been missing and haven't thought about. And of course, it's not just we change; the world changes around us, and suddenly the world will throw a spotlight on Richard III or Lear that makes us think that's why that play is so important. Now we have to do Richard III right now, or Julius Caesar right now, because the politics are so right. And so the Shakespeare's texts seem to respond to the actors and to the world around them, and we have to keep seeing them in the light of today's experience. And they'll always respond to that. They'll always, give you something that you can get your teeth into.
That resonates for the moment, the time. There are no more questions, so Thomas has just put up on the board there for me to read. There are no more questions. So thank you so much again, John. What a privilege it has been and will continue to be for you to so generously give of your time and your wisdom and your imagination and creativity. And because this will be recorded, I'm so looking forward to sharing it with our pre-service teachers who'll be very keen to hear all the kinds of insights that you had into a vast number of the plays, but also for people around the world who will be able to tune in again and linger over so much of what you said, which is certainly what I'll be doing. So thank you, John.
Thank you all very much.
Well, everyone, it remains for me to thank you again for those of you who are here, those of you who are via Zoom. John, thank you once again. It was, your words were so layered, so rich, just like Shakespeare's in a sense, in the way that I think you've inspired all of us to, I'm going to go back and read those wonderful landscapes and think about the parallels between the landscapes of the characters' minds, and think about the parallels for my mindscape as well. And I'd like to thank you and Liam and Jackie very much for your part in tonight. It's been absolutely wonderful. And I'd also like to thank Thomas, who manages and creates events so brilliantly, and Sam as well for your work tonight with us. And I will, just like Jackie, encourage you to go to that recording and delve into those words again. I think we have so much to gain from doing that. Thank you, everyone.